Hi, my name is Kevin Williams. I'm Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Evaluation, Quality and Inspection at the Institute of Education in Dublin City University. I'm speaking today about the Western Canon in the Curriculum, which is the subtitle of my essay, Voices of the Establishment or of Cultural Subversion. The main point of my essay is that the canon is not largely the work of dead white males writing in the interests of a political and social elite against the interests of the working class, women, and the global south. On the contrary, many canonical texts, rather than upholding establishment values, are critical of them. Many great writers criticize hypocrisy, self-righteousness, conventional religiosity, exploitation, European supremacy, and gender stereotypes and abuse in male-female relations. Literature has always been part of my educational journey, and much of the literature that I studied was contestatory in nature. That is, it was subversive of conventional values. Let me explain some of the encounters which I've had over the years with the canon. Firstly, there was the New Testament. The voice of Jesus was a voice against the rich and in favor of the poor. His was also a voice against ethnic tribalism, and his voice was an embracing voice of communities beyond the Jewish world, most notably perhaps expressed in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Jesus also included women in his ministry, which would not have been part of the conventional practice in the time. And he also denounced most strongly those individuals who wished to stone the adulterous woman in the famous lines, the one who is without sin among you cast the first stone. Also, the literature I studied in the Irish language, many of the great Gaelic poets were critical of the imperialist project of the English in Ireland. Of course, this was also expressed by Jonathan Swift, who was an Englishman who was Dean of the St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin. And even in the 20th century, many people may not be aware of the very biting anti-colonial animus in the works of both Yeats and Joyce. Of course, perhaps the writer I learned most from and continue to learn from throughout my life is Shakespeare. I remember in first reading King Lear and being taken aback at how trenchant the voice of Lear was in criticising those who held power against society, against the poor. I remember too the trenchant criticism of racism that occurs in Othello and in The Merchant of Venice. And as a teenager, I was shocked by the way Hamlet addressed Ophelia. I said to myself as a boy, how could a man address his girlfriend in such terms? But of course, it wasn't only English texts that taught me the subversive nature of the canon. I was also impressed by the fables of La Fontaine. La Fontaine was very critical also of the rich and of the exercise of power by the rich against the poor. By the way, in the essay, I also give an example of where La Fontaine identifies domestic abuse by a man against his wife. But it wasn't only La Fontaine. The other great French writers I studied, let me take two of the most notable examples, Montaigne and Voltaire. They were very critical of those who hold power in society. They were also very critical of European supremacy and notions of supremacy over the global south. Of course, in making this case for the subversive nature of the canon, I'm not unmindful that there is ambivalence too in the canon. One of the most striking examples I've come across is in Gulliver's Travels. Lemuel Gulliver, the protagonist, is very critical of the colonial predations of European powers in the global south. But he makes one dramatic exception, and that is Britain. The colonial embrace of Britain, he claims, was for the benefit of those who were subject to its colonialism. And then, of course, I address at some length the novel by Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, which is considered to be a repository of racist values. I don't think this is true. I think this is overcritical of Conrad. However, this is not to deny that there is in A Heart of Darkness a denigration of Africans. They come across in the novel rather as what they call in French figurants, or extras, rather than people in their own right. So, in brief, many works of the canon are subversive of establishment values. However, the essay is not unmindful of the ambivalent legacy of the canon. Thank you very much.